This month, when the Democrats finally passed their big trillion-dollar bill to rebuild our roads and bridges, 6 Democrats voted no because it didn't go far enough to address climate change, which I'm sure is true. What does? But this was free money from the federal government that would actually improve their constituents' lives. I can see a voter saying, you know, squad, I agree with you on climate change. But as long as it is happening, we also need money for getting the water pumped out of the subway.
Bill Maher has once again turned his fire inward, calling out his own political side and accusing it of losing touch with reality. The critique was sharp, unapologetic, and impossible to ignore.
James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since. Just last year, The Guardian declared woke the word of our era. I guess they didn't get the memo from the Mean Girls Club.
It's not often that Maher lets loose on his own ideological camp this openly. But when he does, it's a striking combination of blunt honesty and biting humor. The delivery is ruthless, the points are pointed, and there's a lot to unpack. So buckle up, because this breakdown dives straight into what Maher had to say and why it's stirring so much reaction.
But I will tonight, once again, break out my coach hat and try to point the Democrats in the right direction. That's all I can do. Point you in the right direction. I'm like, throat. Because the way this party is running for office is making me gag.
Maher has reached a clear and unsparing assessment. In his view, the Democratic National Committee has drifted far from its original mission and is now chasing a scattered mix of fringe priorities that no longer align with traditional liberal values. Instead of focusing on issues that affect everyday Americans like employment, cost of living, public safety, and upward mobility, the party has become consumed by ideological gatekeeping and niche activism. Maher argues this growing gap explains recent election losses. Voters didn't suddenly reject liberal ideals themselves. They stopped recognizing their own concerns in a party that no longer spoke to their reality. According to Maher, Democrats didn't fail because they were too bold or too empathetic, but because they forgot what liberalism was supposed to represent. Watching the party lose its footing politically and ethically, Maher sees himself as sounding the alarm, urging Democrats to return to practicality, common sense, and the voters they've steadily alienated.
I know liberals think this country is full of dumb white people, but in our democracy, dumb white people make up a substantial portion of the vote. The median voter is a white person in their 50s who didn't go to college, their favorite TV show is NCIS, and their pronouns are what? I don't know what you're talking about, and get away from me.
Maher insists that if Democrats want to win again, they must stop catering exclusively to their internal echo chamber and refocus on the middle of the electorate. These decisive voters aren't social media activists or ideological hardliners. They're everyday people who decide elections based on practical concerns. Maher describes them as pragmatic, center-leaning voters who care far less about cultural battles than party leaders assume. He argues they aren't disengaging because they're malicious or uninformed, but because they don't see their struggles reflected in the party's agenda. In Maher's view, Democrats have dramatically overestimated how much these voters prioritize symbolic culture issues, while underestimating their concern for safety, economic stability, and affordability. Ignore them, Maher warns, and defeat is inevitable. Dismiss them, lecture them, or write them off, and the outcome is already decided.
In 2008, Republicans only won 4 Virginia counties by more than 70%. This month, in the governor's election there, they did it in 45 counties. And this is what a lot of Democrats were told was the reason for that. Glenn Youngkin's win proves white ignorance is a powerful weapon. Racism still works in Virginia. It's not the messaging, folks. This country simply still loves white supremacy. Well, I haven't worked up an official Democratic campaign slogan for 2024 yet, but I tell you what I have ruled out is vote Democrat because white people suck. That's...
Maher believes Democrats continue to lose ground because they reflexively explain every setback through the lens of identity politics. When their candidates lose, the loss is often framed as a moral or cultural failure of voters. Yet when they win, the system is suddenly praised as fair and functional. Maher is careful to clarify that he supports diversity and equal opportunity, arguing that anyone should be able to run for office and succeed on merit. What frustrates him is the inconsistency in reasoning. Voters, he says, are not oblivious. They notice when losses are blamed on ideology instead of policy, leadership, or messaging. Turning every defeat into a moral indictment rather than a moment for self-examination only drives people away. In Maher's view, Democrats weaken themselves by refusing to confront why voters rejected their platform, choosing instead to moralize outcomes they don't like.
You're alienating a whole lot of people, particularly whites without a college degree, which is most of them, in a country that's still 70% white. I'd say do the math, but math is a form of white supremacy. To a lot of folks in America, you come across as the cares about everybody but me party. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can find ways to stand up for these folks without being David Duke.
According to Maher, Democrats are now paying a steep price for what many working-class voters perceive as abandonment. He argues the party has become so focused on appealing to new groups and global causes that it has stopped speaking clearly to a large portion of its traditional base. Issues like wages, housing costs, crime, and economic security, especially for working and middle-class voters, often take a backseat to broader ideological messaging. Maher stresses that this isn't an attack on immigration or diversity, but a warning about misplaced priorities. When people feel consistently ignored, resentment builds. Over time, many conclude the party no longer sees them as a priority, or worse, views them as an inconvenience. Maher cautions that denying this perception doesn't erase it. It simply guarantees more voters will look elsewhere when elections come around.
But this was free money from the federal government that would actually improve their constituents' lives. I can see a voter saying, you know, squad, I agree with you on climate change. But as long as it is happening, we also need money for getting the water pumped out of the subway. Can we do that before we build the workers' paradise?
Maher goes even further, arguing that the activist-driven wing of the party isn't just overlooking voters but actively dragging the DNC down. In his telling, ideological purity has overtaken practical governance. Instead of accepting funding to improve infrastructure, public safety, or economic conditions, some leaders reject resources if they don't perfectly align with their preferred cultural narratives. Maher views this as self-inflicted damage disguised as moral virtue. Most voters, he says, aren't interested in ideological checklists. They want results. When leaders prioritize symbolic gestures and online approval over real-world solutions, it signals that appearances matter more than outcomes. Maher argues this style of performative politics erodes trust. People see roads left unrepaired, communities struggling, and opportunities wasted, not because solutions didn't exist, but because leaders chose optics over action. Each time that happens, Democrats lose credibility and support.
Why is the party that supports so many issues that benefit the middle class still considered out of touch by 62% of Americans? In plain English, nobody likes a snob. Hillary Clinton didn't have anyone on rural research or outreach when she ran in 2016 until the race tightened just before the election. Then they hired one. And where was his office? Brooklyn. True story. Politics is local, not locally sourced. It's not artisan. It's art and stand.
Maher struck another nerve by calling on Democrats to drop empty theatrics and start delivering measurable results. He argues the party spends far too much energy on symbolic actions, performative outrage, and online virtue signaling that generate attention but change little. Voters, he says, are exhausted by speeches, slogans, and moral declarations that never translate into real improvement. What people want are policies that work: lower costs, safer neighborhoods, stronger schools, and genuine economic security that benefits everyone. Instead, Maher argues Democrats often appear more focused on signaling moral superiority than solving problems. This obsession with optics over outcomes, he believes, is draining public trust. Voters don't elect leaders to be scolded or lectured. They elect them to govern effectively. To regain credibility, Maher says Democrats must abandon grandstanding stop catering to ideological extremes, and return to competent, results-driven governance.
Your microaggression culture doesn't play in the Rust Belt. If a staffer hands you a speech that says menstruating people instead of women, don't say that. Say women.
Maher also argues that Democrats are hurting themselves by constantly appeasing what he describes as a loud but unrepresentative activist faction. In his assessment, this group has gained outsized influence over the party's language, priorities, and public image. Maher urges Democrats to move away from constantly shifting buzzwords, performative outrage, and rigid ideological messaging. He contends that none of it resonates with the concerns most voters actually have. Instead, it alienates people who feel talked down to rather than included. Elections, Maher reminds viewers, are not won by impressing activists or dominating online discourse. They're won by addressing fundamentals like affordability, safety, opportunity, and competent leadership. When Democrats prioritize ideological signaling over practical solutions, they lose the trust of the voters who decide elections. Maher's message is direct. Drop the posturing, communicate clearly, govern seriously, and reconnect with the center.
Don't put anyone fresh out of college in charge of the campaign. They've been given participation trophies their whole life. They don't know how to win. James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since.
Veteran liberals like Bill Maher and James Carville have become some of the most vocal critics of what they see as the excesses of modern woke politics, often dismissing it as counterproductive. From their perspective, liberalism once focused on winning elections and improving lives, not enforcing language rules or chasing ideological perfection. In contrast, Maher argues many younger liberals have fully embraced these ideas as unquestionable doctrine rather than strategic tools. Figures like AOC and others, in his view, intensify the problem by leaning into rhetoric that energizes activists while pushing away everyday voters. Instead of broadening the party's appeal, this approach narrows it, turning politics into a purity test rather than a governing mission. The generational divide is clear. Older liberals warn this path leads to electoral losses, while younger voices seem convinced moral signaling alone can win votes. Maher's warning is blunt. Democrats are losing because they've lost focus. Until the party sheds ideological theatrics, speaks plainly, and delivers real results for ordinary Americans, it will keep losing elections and blaming everyone but itself. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you found it insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.